My name is Renee Johnson, and at 67 years old, I thought I had experienced all of life's surprises. I was a high school teacher in Portland for 35 years and raised my only son Travis alone after my husband died when our boy was just 10. We were inseparable until Travis met Allison 3 years ago. When they announced their engagement, I was overjoyed. But when I called to ask what time the wedding would be, Allison casually replied, "Oh, we already got married yesterday." Only special people were invited. The pain cut deeper than any knife ever could. If you are watching this video, I would love to know where you are viewing from. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons while I share how this heartbreaking moment led to an unexpected turning point in our relationship. Travis was always my pride and joy. When Mark, my husband, died from a sudden heart attack, Travis became my entire world. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Portland, the same home where Travis took his first steps and where I still live today. Those early years without Mark were tough financially. I took on extra tutoring hours after school and during summers to make sure Travis had everything he needed. I remember how Travis would sit at the kitchen table every evening while I graded papers doing his homework diligently. He was such a bright child, always asking questions, always curious about how things worked. By the time he reached high school, he was already showing an exceptional talent for computers and mathematics. I did everything I could to nurture that talent, even taking a second mortgage on the house to buy him his first proper computer when he was 15. "Mom, one day I'll pay you back for everything he promised when he received his acceptance letter to MIT with a partial scholarship." I still had to contribute $20,000 a year, but seeing his eyes light up made every penny worth it. I sold my car, started taking the bus to work, and cut every expense possible to make it happen. The 4 years he spent in Massachusetts were difficult with him being so far away, but we talked every Sunday without fail. He would tell me about his classes, his projects, and eventually about the job offers that started pouring in during his senior year. When he accepted a position at a tech company in Seattle after graduation, I was thrilled he would be closer to home, just a 3-hour drive away. Travis thrived in his career, quickly rising through the ranks as a software engineer. By 30, he had already been promoted to project manager. Our relationship remained strong. He would drive down to Portland twice a month, and I would occasionally visit him in Seattle. We celebrated holidays together, and he always made time for me during important moments. Everything changed when Travis attended a tech conference in San Francisco 3 years ago. That's where he met Allison, a marketing executive at a rival company. When he first mentioned her, his voice had a different tone to it. I could tell immediately that this woman was special to him. "Mom, I met someone," he said during our weekly call. "Her name is Allison Parker. She's smart, ambitious, and beautiful." 3 months later, he brought her to Portland to meet me. Allison was indeed beautiful, with sleek brown hair, sharp blue eyes, and an immaculate sense of style. She was charming during that first dinner, asking questions about Travis's childhood and complimenting my home. But I noticed something in her eyes when she looked around my modest living room, a brief flicker that seemed like assessment rather than interest. "Your home has such character, Renee," she said, running her finger along my bookshelf. "It must hold so many memories for you and Travis." It was a perfectly nice comment, but something about the way she said it felt slightly dismissive, as if my home, and by extension my life, were quaint artifacts rather than something to be respected. After that first meeting, I noticed subtle changes in Travis. Our phone calls became shorter. His visits to Portland decreased from twice a month to once a month, then to once every other month. When I would suggest visiting him in Seattle, there was always some reason why that weekend wouldn't work. "Allison and I are really busy with work right now, Mom," he would say. "Maybe next month would be better." Still, I tried my best to build a relationship with Allison. I sent her birthday and Christmas gifts. I forwarded articles I thought might interest her based on what Travis had told me about her work. I even invited her to join me for a girls' weekend in Portland when Travis was away on a business trip. She always responded politely, but found reasons why she couldn't accept my invitations. "That's so thoughtful of you, Renee, but I already have plans that weekend with my college friends." I told myself not to take it personally. She was young, busy with her career, and probably wanted to spend her free time with people her own age. I understood that. I really did. Last Thanksgiving, Travis and Allison came to dinner at my home. As we were finishing the pumpkin pie I had baked from my mother's recipe, Travis reached for Allison's hand and announced, "Mom, we have some news. We're engaged." I jumped up from my chair and hugged them both, tears of joy streaming down my face. "I'm so happy for you two. This is wonderful news." "We're thinking of a spring wedding," Allison said, showing me the diamond ring on her finger. "Something small and intimate." "Whatever you want, dear," I replied already, mentally preparing to help in any way I could. "Just tell me what you need from me." That night after they left, I sat in my living room looking at old photo albums of Travis, growing up thinking about how my little boy was now going to be a married man. I felt a mix of joy and nostalgia, completely unaware of the heartbreak that was waiting for me just around the corner. As soon as Travis and Allison announced their engagement, I eagerly offered my help with the wedding planning. I had saved $12,000 over the years, specifically for Travis's wedding day. It wasn't a fortune, but I hoped it would help give them the celebration they deserved. "That's very generous, Mom," Travis said when I told him about the money. "We'll definitely put it to good use." When I called Allison to discuss wedding details, her response was polite but distant. "Thanks for offering to help, Renee, but I have very specific ideas for the wedding. My mother and I have already started planning." I tried not to feel hurt by this. Of course she would want her own mother involved in the planning. That was perfectly natural. Still, I hoped I could contribute in some way. "Maybe I could help with the flowers I used to arrange flowers for school functions," I suggested. "Oh, we've already chosen a florist," Allison replied. "But thanks for the offer." Every suggestion I made was met with the same response. The venue was already selected. The caterer was already booked. The dress was already being designed. Whenever I asked for specific details about these arrangements, the answers were vague. "We're still finalizing things," became Allison's standard response. Increasingly, Travis became the messenger between us. He would call to update me on wedding plans, always apologizing that details were still being worked out. When I expressed my concerns about being left out of the planning, he assured me that everything was fine. "Allison is just stressed about the wedding and her job, Mom. She wants everything to be perfect." In January, I reached out to Allison's mother, hoping to connect with her and perhaps find a way to be more involved in the wedding preparations. I found her on social media and sent a friendly message introducing myself and expressing my excitement about our children's upcoming marriage. Days passed without a response. When I finally received a reply, it was brief and formal. "Hello, Renee. Yes, very exciting times ahead. Allison has told me so much about you." That was it. No invitation to connect further, no warmth, nothing that indicated she was interested in building a relationship with the mother of her future son-in-law. In February, I was browsing through Facebook when I saw photos of a bridal shower for Allison. There she was, surrounded by her mother, sisters, and friends, opening gifts and laughing. I had not been invited. When I called Travis to ask about it, he sounded uncomfortable. "Oh, that was just a small thing her sisters put together at the last minute," he explained. "It wasn't a formal bridal shower." The photos suggested otherwise. It looked like an elaborately planned event with decorations, catered food, and at least 20 guests. I felt a sharp pang of exclusion but tried to push it aside. The next time Travis visited, I confronted him more directly about feeling sidelined in the wedding preparations. "I feel like I'm being deliberately kept at a distance, Travis. Is there something wrong? Have I done something to upset Allison?" Travis ran his hand through his hair, a gesture he had since childhood when he was stressed. "No, Mom, of course not. It's just that Allison has a very clear vision for the wedding, and she's particular about things. She's under a lot of pressure at work, too. Once the wedding is over, things will be better, I promise." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. So I backed off, telling myself that the most important thing was to maintain a good relationship with my future daughter-in-law, even if that meant accepting a more distant role than I had hoped for. March turned into April, and the supposed wedding date was approaching. Yet I still had not received a formal invitation. When I mentioned this to Travis, he assured me that the invitations were delayed at the printer. But don't worry, Mom. You're obviously invited. We wouldn't have a wedding without you there. The week before, what I understood to be the wedding date, I called Travis to ask about final details. He didn't answer, so I tried Allison's number instead. When she picked up, I asked as casually as I could. "Hi, Allison. I was just wondering what time the wedding will be on Saturday, and is there anything I can bring or help with on the day?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, then Allison's voice cool and casual. "Oh, Renee. We actually decided to do something really small and intimate. We got married yesterday at the courthouse. Just us and a few special people." The world seemed to stop. I couldn't breathe. My hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. You already got married." I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes. It was very last minute. We decided a big wedding was too much stress. I'm sure Travis meant to tell you." I ended the call shortly after promising to speak to Travis later. As soon as I hung up, I collapsed onto my sofa, a pain in my chest so intense, I wondered if I was having a heart attack. My son had gotten married without me. He hadn't wanted me there on what should have been one of the most important days of his life. The pain was almost unbearable, but it was only the beginning. The conversation with Allison replayed in my mind for hours afterward. Just us, and a few special people, she had said. The implication was clear: I was not considered special enough to witness my only child's wedding. I tried to maintain my composure during that call, not wanting to give Allison the satisfaction of hearing me break down. "Well, congratulations to you both," I had managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "I hope you had a lovely day." "It was perfect," Allison had replied, and I could almost hear the smile in her voice. "Exactly what we wanted." After hanging up, I sat motionless in my living room for what felt like hours. The walls of my home, usually so comforting, seemed to close in around me. This was the house where I had raised Travis, where we had celebrated every milestone together. The house that held thousands of memories of our life as a family. And now the most significant milestone in his adult life had happened without me. That evening, still reeling from the news, I made the mistake of checking social media. There, on Allison's Instagram page, were photos from their intimate courthouse wedding. It was far from the hastily arranged event Allison had described. The bride wore a beautiful white dress. There was a professional photographer and flowers that must have cost hundreds of dollars. But what truly shattered my heart was seeing who had attended this intimate ceremony. Allison's parents were there, beaming proudly in formal attire. Her two sisters served as bridesmaids in matching blue dresses. Even her grandmother had been included. The few special people turned out to be Allison's entire family. I was the only family member deliberately excluded. My phone rang around 9 that night. It was Travis. I almost didn't answer, but some desperate part of me needed to hear his explanation. "Mom," he began, his voice strained. "I guess you talked to Allison." "Yes," I replied, simply waiting for him to continue. "I'm sorry you found out that way. We just decided at the last minute that a big wedding wasn't what we wanted." "But your entire wedding party was Allison's family," I said, fighting to keep my voice from breaking. "Her parents, sisters, grandmother. How is that a last-minute decision, Travis?" He hesitated. "It just happened really quickly. Allison's father was in town for business, and it seemed like a good opportunity." Each word felt like another betrayal. I had raised this man, loved him unconditionally for 34 years, sacrificed everything for his happiness and success, and now he couldn't even be honest with me. The photos show a planned event, Travis. The matching dresses, the professional photographer. That doesn't happen last minute. Mom, please try to understand. We wanted something simple, without all the stress of a big wedding. And including me would have been too stressful, I asked, the hurt finally breaking through in my voice. It's not like that, he protested weakly. We're going to have a reception in a few months. You'll be part of that. The conversation went in circles, with Travis offering weak explanations and me trying to understand how my son could exclude me from such an important moment. By the time we hung up, nothing had been resolved, and the distance between us felt greater than ever before. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake remembering all the sacrifices I had made as a single mother. The second job I took to pay for Travis's braces when he was 12. The vacation funds I diverted to send him to computer camp when he was 15. The retirement savings I used to help with his college tuition. All those years of putting his needs above my own, and this was how he repaid me. The next morning, my sister Barbara called. She had seen the wedding photos online and was concerned about me. "Renee, I can't believe they did this to you," she said, her voice filled with indignation. "What did Travis say when you talked to him?" I recounted our conversation, the tears I had held back the night before, finally flowing freely. "There's something else you should know," Barbara said hesitantly. "Jen told me that Travis and Allison bought a house last month." Jen was Barbara's daughter who lived in Seattle and occasionally saw Travis and Allison at social events. A house. Travis never mentioned buying a house. Another secret. Another exclusion. It's in Bellevue, apparently. One of those new luxury developments. After we hung up, I checked my bank statements. 2 months earlier, Travis had asked me to transfer the $12,000 I had saved for the wedding. "We're putting deposits down for vendors," he had explained. Now I wondered if that money had actually gone toward a down payment on their new house. My friend Joyce came over that afternoon with coffee and pastries. She had been my colleague at the high school for 20 years and knew Travis since he was a teenager. "You have every right to be hurt, Renee," she said as we sat at my kitchen table. "But don't make any decisions while you're in this emotional state. Take some time to process what's happened." It was good advice. I decided to take a week away from the situation. No calls to Travis or Allison, no social media, just time alone to think and heal. I called in a favor from another retired teacher friend who had a cabin on the Oregon coast and spent 5 days walking on the beach, journaling, and trying to understand how my relationship with my son had deteriorated to this point. By the time I returned home, I had gained some perspective, but the wound was still raw. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to begin figuring out what would come next. Back home from the Oregon coast, I found myself in a strange limbo. Travis had called 3 times during my absence, but I wasn't ready to speak with him yet. I needed more time to process everything that had happened and to understand the full extent of what I was dealing with. The day after my return, I met with my friend Diane for lunch. Diane's son had gone to high school with Travis, and they had remained friends despite living in different cities. As we ate our salads at our favorite local bistro, Diane hesitated before sharing something troubling. "I don't know if I should tell you this, Renee, but Kevin mentioned something when we talked last week. He said Travis told him months ago that Allison didn't want a big wedding specifically because she didn't want to deal with your input on the planning." The fork I was holding clattered against my plate. "What?" Diane reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry. Kevin said Travis confided in him that Allison thought you would try to take over the wedding planning and make it about you. Apparently she had decided as far back as Christmas that they would elope and only include her family." This revelation was like a physical blow. The wedding wasn't a last-minute decision at all. It had been planned for months with the specific intention of excluding me. "Did Travis agree with her assessment of me?" I asked, dreading the answer. Diane looked uncomfortable. "Kevin said Travis seemed torn. He defended you but ultimately went along with what Allison wanted." Over the next few days, more disturbing information came to light. Another friend mentioned seeing Travis and Allison at a restaurant during the holidays when Travis had told me he was working late. A neighbor who had traveled to Seattle reported seeing them at a community event when they had declined my invitation for the same weekend, claiming they were both down with the flu. I began to realize that the wedding was just the culmination of a pattern of deception that had been building for some time. Looking back through my phone, I found photos Travis had posted online of family gatherings at Allison's parents' home events he had never mentioned to me. There were birthday celebrations, holiday dinners, weekend barbecues, all with Allison's family, all without a single invitation extended to me. The most hurtful discovery came when I was cleaning out some old files and found the hospital records from when Travis had his appendix removed 2 years earlier. I had been listed as his emergency contact, but no one had called me. When I checked the dates against my calendar, I realized it had happened during a week when Travis had been unusually difficult to reach. He had claimed he was swamped with a work project. In reality, he had been in the hospital, and someone, presumably Allison, had made the decision not to inform me. As painful as these discoveries were, they paled in comparison to what I learned when I met with my financial advisor Harold for our quarterly review. "I've been meaning to ask you about these monthly transfers to Travis," Harold said, pulling up my account activity on his computer screen. "They've been going on for quite some time now. Is this something you want to continue indefinitely?" I stared at the screen in confusion. There listed clearly were monthly transfers of $2,000 to Travis's account dating back almost 3 years, coinciding with when he had started dating Allison. "I don't understand," I said. "I send Travis money for his birthday and Christmas, and I transferred the wedding fund recently, but I don't make monthly payments to him." Harold frowned and turned the screen so I could see it better. "These automatic transfers were set up 3 years ago. According to my notes, Travis called to help set it up. He said you wanted to contribute to his down payment fund for a future home purchase." The room seemed to spin around me. I had no memory of authorizing these transfers. Yes, I had mentioned to Travis that I would help him with a down payment someday, but I had never agreed to a specific amount or timeline. These transfers totaled over $70,000 over 3 years, a significant portion of my retirement savings. When I got home, I called my bank directly and requested all records of communication regarding the setup of these transfers. What they sent me the next day confirmed my worst fears. The authorization had been initiated through online banking, using my credentials with a phone verification that went to Travis's number, not mine. Somehow, he had accessed my account information and set up these transfers without my explicit consent. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of financial documents, a glass of wine, and a heart full of disbelief. The son I had raised, the boy I had taught to be honest and respectful, had been systematically deceiving me and taking advantage of my finances. I remembered Mark's final days in the hospital, how he had made Travis, then just 10 years old, promise to always take care of me. "You're the man of the house now, buddy," Mark had said, his voice weak but determined. "Promise me you'll look after your mom." "I promise, Dad," Travis had replied, tears streaming down his young face. How far we had come from that moment. How completely that promise had been broken. The stress of these discoveries began to take a physical toll on me. I developed insomnia, waking at 3 or 4 in the morning, unable to fall back asleep. My blood pressure, normally stable, began to rise. I lost my appetite and 6 pounds in 2 weeks. Barbara, ever protective of her older sister, urged me to take action. "You need to confront him, Renee. And you need to stop those transfers immediately." I know I agreed. But I want to be calm when I do it. I don't want to say something in anger that I'll regret later. "What he's done is financial abuse," Barbara insisted. "You worked your entire life for that money. It's meant to support you in your retirement, not fund his lifestyle with a woman who doesn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding." She was right, of course. But the thought of confronting Travis, of acknowledging how deeply our relationship had deteriorated, was almost unbearable. This was my only child, my son, the person I loved most in the world. How had we reached this point? As I considered my options, I realized something important. By continuing to enable Travis financially without holding him accountable for his behavior, I was contributing to the problem. My unconditional giving had created a sense of entitlement. It was time for that to change. It was time to establish boundaries, not just for my financial well-being, but for the health of our relationship moving forward. The opportunity to implement this change came sooner than I expected, and in a way I could never have anticipated. Exactly 1 week after discovering the unauthorized transfers, the first of the month arrived. This was typically when the automatic payment to Travis's account would process, but this time, after consulting with both my financial advisor and my bank, I had canceled the automatic transfer. The money would stay in my account unless I chose to send it. 3 days passed with no word from Travis or Allison. I spent those days reorganizing my finances, meeting with a lawyer to discuss what had happened with the transfers, and beginning to create a new financial plan that prioritized my own security and future needs. On the fourth day, my phone rang. It was Allison, which surprised me as she rarely called me directly. Renee, she began without preamble, her voice tight with stress. There seems to be some kind of banking error. The rent payment for our apartment bounced, and the landlord is threatening late fees. Did you forget to transfer the money this month? So they were still paying rent despite buying a house. Interesting. I took a deep breath before responding, keeping my voice calm and measured. No, Allison, I didn't forget. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh, is there a problem with your account? Because we were counting on that money and now we're in a difficult position. The audacity was breathtaking. Not a word about the wedding. No acknowledgement of how they had treated me, just an expectation that the money would continue to flow regardless. There's no problem with my account, I replied. I simply decided not to transfer the money this month. Another pause, longer this time. When Allison spoke again, her voice had a sharper edge to it. I don't understand. Travis said you've been helping with our rent while we save for our house. We need that money. Didn't Travis tell you? I asked, borrowing her casual tone from the wedding revelation. I decided to make some changes to my financial arrangements. Only special people get my financial support now. The silence that followed was profound. I could almost hear her processing my words, recognizing her own phrase thrown back at her. I think you should talk to Travis about this, she finally said, her voice cold. I agree, I replied. I think that's long overdue. Less than 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Travis, his voice a mix of confusion and anger. Mom, what's going on? Allison said you refused to send the money this month. That's correct, I confirmed. I've decided to stop the automatic transfers. But we need that money for rent, he protested. And we're trying to furnish the new house. We've already ordered furniture based on this month's transfer. I took a moment to process this. So they were paying rent on an apartment while simultaneously buying and furnishing a new house, all with my money. The financial irresponsibility was staggering. Travis, we need to talk about these transfers. They were set up without my proper authorization. Did you use my online banking credentials to establish them? He hesitated, and in that hesitation I had my answer. It wasn't like that. He finally said, You mentioned wanting to help me save for a house. I just made it easier by setting up the transfers directly. Without discussing the amount or frequency with me. Without my explicit consent, Travis, that's not making things easier. That's taking advantage of me. Mom, you've always helped me financially. I didn't think it was a big deal. And I've been happy to help you when you needed it. But these transfers have been going on for 3 years, totaling over $70,000. That's a significant amount of my retirement savings. I was going to pay you back once we were more established, he insisted, but the promise rang hollow. Like you were going to include me in your wedding, I asked quietly. The question hung in the air between us. Travis sighed heavily. That was different. Allison wanted something small and intimate. Small and intimate enough to include her entire family, but not your only living parent, the person who raised you alone after your father died. Mom, I'm sorry about the wedding. We should have handled it differently. But right now, we need that money for rent. Can you please just transfer it for this month? And we can figure out a different arrangement going forward. It was the perfect opportunity to establish a clear boundary. No, Travis. I won't be transferring money this month or in the future without a clear agreement between us about what the money is for and how it will be repaid. So you're just cutting us off completely, without any warning. His voice rose in disbelief. Didn't I tell you? I said, my voice steady. Only special people get my financial support. Travis inhaled sharply. That's not fair, Mom. You're punishing me because you're upset about the wedding. I'm not punishing you, Travis. I'm establishing a boundary that should have been in place long ago. You're 34 years old with a well-paying job. It's time you learn to live within your means without relying on your mother's retirement savings. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Travis growing increasingly angry and accusatory. He claimed I was being selfish, that I had always promised to support him, that I was breaking my commitment because of petty jealousy toward Allison. I listened without responding to the accusations, waiting until he had exhausted his anger. Travis, I love you. That hasn't changed. But our relationship needs to change. When you're ready to talk about rebuilding trust and establishing healthy boundaries, I'll be here. After we hung up, I sat in my garden watching the birds at my feeder and reflecting on what had just happened. For the first time in years, possibly since Travis left for college, I had asserted my own needs and set a clear boundary. It was painful, yes, but also strangely liberating. Over the next few days, Travis and Allison mobilized their resources to try to change my mind. Allison's mother called, introducing herself properly for the first time, to explain what a difficult position the young couple was in financially. Travis's friend from college, whom I had always liked, reached out to remind me how hard Travis had worked and how much he deserved my support. Even my sister Barbara received a call from Travis asking her to intervene on his behalf. None of it swayed me. After consulting with my financial advisor, I had a clear picture of my own financial situation. The unauthorized transfers had significantly impacted my retirement savings. If they had continued, I would have faced the real possibility of financial insecurity in my later years. Harold, my advisor, was supportive of my decision. This isn't just about the money, Renee, he said during our meeting. It's about respect and boundaries. Travis needs to understand that your financial support is a gift, not an entitlement. I just keep wondering where I went wrong, I admitted. How did I raise a son who would exclude me from his wedding and take my money without asking? You didn't go wrong, Harold assured me. But sometimes our love for our children blinds us to behaviors we would never accept from anyone else. Travis is an adult now. It's time he took full responsibility for his choices and their consequences. As difficult as it was, I stood firm. The rent money would not be transferred. Travis and Allison would need to find another solution to their financial problems, one that didn't involve my retirement savings. It was time for all of us to face reality, however uncomfortable that might be. The weeks following my decision to stop the transfers were challenging but transformative. Travis and I didn't speak for 14 days, the longest we had ever gone without communication since he left for college. During that silence, I focused on rebuilding my own life and strength. On Barbara's recommendation, I started seeing a therapist named Carolyn, who specialized in family relationships. In our first session, I poured out the whole story from Travis, meeting Allison to the wedding exclusion to the financial deception. What you're describing is a classic pattern of enabling, Carolyn explained after listening attentively. By consistently providing financial support without expectations or boundaries, you unintentionally created a situation where Travis came to view your resources as an extension of his own. But I was just trying to help him, I protested. That's what mothers do. There's a difference between supporting your child and enabling dependence, she replied gently. One prepares them for independence, the other prevents it. Over several sessions, we explored how my fear of losing Travis's love after his father died had led me to overcompensate with financial generosity and few expectations in return. I had confused unconditional love with unconditional giving, and in doing so had contributed to the unhealthy dynamic between us. Your decision to stop the transfers wasn't just about the money, Carolyn observed. It was about reclaiming your power in the relationship. She was right. For too long, I had allowed my identity to be defined primarily as Travis's mother, his supporter, his safety net. Now, at 67, I was finally learning to prioritize my own well-being. 15 days after our confrontation, Travis called. His voice sounded different, subdued, and perhaps a bit humbled. Mom, can we talk? In person. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between Portland and Seattle. When I arrived, Travis was already there, sitting alone at a corner table. Allison was noticeably absent. Thank you for coming, he said, as I sat down across from him. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, and his normally neat hair slightly disheveled. Of course, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Travis took a deep breath. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. What happened with the wedding was inexcusable. You should have been there, and I should have stood up to Allison when she suggested excluding you." It was the first time he had acknowledged direct responsibility rather than offering excuses. I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "And the transfers he went on, that was wrong on so many levels. I violated your trust. I took advantage of your generosity. I'm ashamed of myself for doing that." "What prompted this change of heart?" I asked, not entirely convinced by this sudden remorse. Travis looked down at his coffee. "Reality, I guess. After you stopped the transfers, we couldn't make rent. We had to borrow money from friends. It was humiliating, but it made me realize how dependent we'd become on your money, and how unfair that was to you." "Where does Allison stand in all this?" I asked, knowing her influence over Travis. He shifted uncomfortably. "She's adjusting. It's been hard for her to accept that our financial situation has changed, but she's coming around to the idea that we need to be more independent." We talked for nearly 3 hours, delving into all the issues that had been simmering beneath the surface of our relationship. Travis admitted that he had allowed Allison to dictate the terms of my involvement in their lives, partly because he was conflict-averse, and partly because he had begun to see me through her eyes rather than his own. "She comes from a different world," he explained. "Her family has money, multiple homes, country club memberships. She saw your house, your lifestyle, and immediately categorized you as less than." The truth hurt, but it was liberating to finally hear it spoken aloud. "And you adopted her perspective?" I asked. Travis had the grace to look ashamed. "Not consciously. But I stopped defending you when I should have. I let her narrative become the dominant one." By the end of our conversation, we had established a framework for moving forward. The financial support would not resume, not in its previous form. Travis would need to learn to live within his means. But I offered to help him create a realistic budget and financial plan drawing on my years of careful money management. "And I want to have a relationship with both of you," I said. "But it needs to be based on mutual respect." Travis nodded. "I want that too. And I'll work on Allison. She needs to understand that you're an important part of my life." The first family dinner after our coffee shop meeting was awkward, to say the least. Allison came with Travis to my home in Portland, her body language stiff, and her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I had prepared a simple meal, nothing elaborate that could be interpreted as showing off or trying too hard. "Your home looks nice," Renee Allison said as she surveyed my living room, which I had recently repainted and updated with new curtains, part of my self-care routine during our estrangement. "Thank you," I replied. "I've been enjoying some home improvement projects lately." The conversation remained stilted throughout the appetizer, but gradually warmed as we moved to the main course. Travis made an effort to include both of us, equally asking me about my friends and activities, then turning to Allison to discuss her work projects. Toward the end of the evening, Allison brought up their housing situation, seemingly unable to help herself. "We had to back out of the house purchase," she said, a hint of accusation in her tone. "The lender wouldn't approve the mortgage without the proof of income from your transfers." I met her gaze steadily. "I'm sorry to hear that. Buying a home is a significant commitment. It's important to be on solid financial footing first." "We were doing fine until you changed the rules," she replied. Travis interjected quickly. "Allison, we've talked about this. Mom didn't change any rules. We were relying on money that wasn't guaranteed." It was a small moment, but significant. Travis was establishing a new pattern, one where he wouldn't allow Allison to disrespect me even subtly. Over the following months, Travis and Allison faced the reality of their financial situation. They gave up the apartment they couldn't afford and moved to a smaller place in a less prestigious neighborhood. Allison had to sell some of her designer handbags and jewelry to cover outstanding debts. Travis took on consulting work on weekends to supplement their income. It wasn't easy for them. Allison in particular struggled with the lifestyle adjustment. But slowly they began to establish a more sustainable way of living. And in that process, something unexpected happened. They began to take pride in their independence. "We paid off one of our credit cards completely," Travis told me during a phone call, genuine accomplishment in his voice. "And we're cooking at home 5 nights a week now instead of eating out." That's wonderful, Travis, I said, feeling a mother's pride in her child's growth, even if it came later than expected. As for me, I continued my own journey of self-discovery and empowerment. I joined a travel group for seniors and took my first trip to Europe, something I had always dreamed of, but had deferred in favor of supporting Travis. I renovated my kitchen. Not the basic update I would have chosen before to save money for Travis, but the one I truly wanted with granite countertops and new appliances. The road to healing our family relationships was long and sometimes bumpy. There were setbacks and difficult conversations. But gradually, we began to establish a new normal one, based on mutual respect, rather than financial dependence. And through it all, I held firm to the boundary I had set. I would support Travis and Allison, emotionally offer guidance when asked, and share in their lives as family should. But my financial resources would remain my own, to be shared only by my choice, not their expectation. It was a difficult lesson for all of us, but a necessary one. 6 months after the wedding that happened without me, Travis and Allison invited me to dinner at their new apartment. It was smaller than their previous place, located in a modest neighborhood, rather than the trendy area they had preferred before. But as I entered, I noticed something important. It felt like a home, not just a showcase. "We wanted to cook for you for a change," Travis explained as he took my coat. "Allison has become quite the chef." Allison, stirring something that smelled delicious on the stove, gave me a smile that seemed more genuine than any I had seen from her before. "It's nothing fancy," she said. "Just my grandmother's pasta recipe. But it's made with love." That evening marked a turning point in our relationship. As we sat around their small dining table, the conversation flowed more naturally than it ever had before. Allison asked about my recent trip to Italy, showing actual interest in my experiences. Travis shared news about a promotion at work earned through his own merit rather than connections or shortcuts. "We've been doing a lot of thinking about family," Travis said as we enjoyed coffee after dinner, "about what it means to truly support each other." "And what have you concluded?" I asked. "That support isn't just financial," Allison answered, surprising me with her insight. "It's about respect, showing up for each other, celebrating successes, and helping through failures." "We missed out on having you at our wedding," Travis added, reaching for my hand across the table. "That's something we can never redo. But we're hoping to build new memories, better ones, moving forward." Their sincerity touched me deeply. The past couldn't be changed, but perhaps the future could be better than I had dared to hope. Over the following months, our family dynamic continued to evolve in positive ways. Travis and Allison began to demonstrate a new level of maturity and independence. They lived within their means, saved for their goals, and approached life as partners, rather than expecting outside assistance. "We're thinking about starting a family next year," Travis told me during a Sunday phone call. "But we want to be financially prepared first." "That's a wise approach," I said, proud of his grown-up perspective. "Children are a joy, but also a responsibility." "I learned that from you, Mom," he replied. "You always put my needs first, sometimes at your own expense. I want to be that kind of parent, but without making my child feel responsible for my happiness or well-being." His self-awareness brought tears to my eyes. Perhaps the painful journey we had been through had taught lessons that could not have been learned any other way. As for my own growth, I continued to expand my horizons. I volunteered at a literacy program helping adults learn to read. I joined a hiking group and discovered muscles I didn't know I had. I even began dating again, sharing dinner and a movie with Walter, a kind retired professor I met at a community lecture series. "You seem different," Barbara observed during one of our sister lunches. "More confident, more yourself somehow." "I am different," I agreed. For decades, my identity was wrapped up in being Travis's mother. Now I'm rediscovering who Renee is beyond that role. One significant change in my financial approach was the establishment of education funds for Travis and Allison's future children. Rather than directly supporting the couple, I decided to invest in the next generation. "I've set up education accounts for your future children," I explained to them during a weekend visit. "They'll be there when the time comes, but the money is specifically designated for education expenses." That's incredibly generous, Renee, Allison said, and I could see she genuinely appreciated this approach, which came with clear boundaries and purpose. Education was always a priority in our family, I explained. I want to continue that tradition, while respecting that you two are building your own financial independence. The holiday season arrived, bringing with it memories of past celebrations and opportunities for new traditions. When Travis and Allison invited me to spend Christmas with them and Allison's family, I accepted with some trepidation. Allison's parents' home was exactly as I had imagined: large, beautifully decorated, and intimidating in its perfection. But to my surprise, Allison's mother Margaret greeted me with genuine warmth. "We've heard so much about you," she said, taking my hands in hers. "Travis has been telling us about all you did as a single mother. I'm so impressed by your strength." Later, Margaret confided in me privately. "Allison has changed these past months. She talks about learning budgeting skills from you, about appreciating the value of earning what you have. I think losing that house was the best thing that could have happened to them." It wasn't a direct apology for their role in excluding me from the wedding, but it was an acknowledgement of growth and changed perspectives. I chose to accept it as such. As we gathered around their dining table, 3 generations sharing a meal together, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for a long time. The journey had been painful, the lessons hard-won, but we had arrived at a place of mutual respect and genuine connection. The truth I had learned through this experience was profound love, without boundaries, isn't really love at all. True love requires respect, honesty, and sometimes the courage to say no. By reclaiming my power and establishing clear boundaries, I had not only protected myself, but had given Travis and Allison the opportunity to grow into the adults they needed to become. "I'd like to propose a toast," Travis said, raising his glass. "To family, to learning from our mistakes, and to Mom, who had the courage to teach me one of the most important lessons of my life, even when it was difficult." As glasses clinked around the table, I felt tears of gratitude in my eyes. The pain of exclusion had been transformed into the joy of genuine inclusion. The betrayal had been healed through honesty and accountability, and through it all, love had remained, not the enabling boundary-less version I had offered before, but a stronger, healthier love that respected both Travis and myself. Life doesn't always give us the celebration we expect. Sometimes the most meaningful growth comes through disappointment and challenge. My son's wedding happened without me, but in its place, I received something perhaps more valuable: a relationship based on truth, respect, and authentic connection. As I think back on that phone call where Allison casually told me they had already gotten married without me, I realize it was the beginning of a journey, not the end. A journey that led all of us to a better place than we could have imagined. I wonder if any of you have faced similar situations with your adult children. Have you struggled with setting boundaries while maintaining loving relationships? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else navigating these complex family dynamics. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories about life's challenging moments and the wisdom they can bring. Thank you for listening, and may your own family journeys lead to healing and genuine connection.